Hey there, OneBrightSheep here, and today I'm bringing you my very first watercolor speed painting. I've been meaning to do this for a while now, and I just got around to do it last night. So in this video we'll be showing you a little bit about my creative process, as well as some tips and tricks that will maybe help you with your watercolor journey. And so yeah, let's get started. So, I usually like to begin my paintings by blocking in the background. I like my colors to be very muted and very dull, because I don't know, I feel like that's an aesthetic that I enjoy the most. And for this piece, and for most of my pieces, I usually just mix cobalt blue or any sort of blue with burnt sienna to get a grayish kind of color. In here it doesn't look very gray yet, but I feel like that's just because of the way the camera picked up the color, but in real life it was pretty gray. And yeah, I'll tell you now a bit about the piece. In case you don't follow me on Instagram, I posted there a few weeks, I believe, ago, that I was starting to feel a bit disconnected with my art. I initially started with digital media. I used my iPad Pro to paint everything with the app Procreate, and that was working out fine. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I really enjoyed painting there. But then I started to feel like I focused too much on drawing stuff that looked pretty instead of stuff that communicated something. At first, my initial goal with my art was to have people I know be like get a wow reaction from them, like in wow, that's actually looking like a face, like what it's supposed to look like. But as of late, I decided I wanted to evoke a more strong connection with the audience, or the people that see my art. And so I decided that in order to do that, I needed to go back and try out traditional media once more, because even though I'm pretty sure that you can get the same results with like reaction wise with digital media, I feel like I'm not quite skilled yet to portray a feeling that's strong through digital strokes and everything. So I decided to ultimately go back and give watercolors a try again. I was initially introduced to this medium by a teacher in my first year of college. She was my color theory teacher, and she asked us to do a lot of paintings and whatnot. And the medium that I found out that I enjoyed most was watercolors. I still haven't tried out oil yet, but for now watercolors are what I enjoy the most. I just like how flowy everything is, and also how relaxing it is to paint with watercolors. Of course, you get like a lot of mistakes if you're not careful, but I also believe that those mistakes are what makes a digital piece, a traditional piece, so much more interesting than a digital piece, because with traditional media you don't really have like an undo tool or an erase tool, and you have to be very careful with every stroke that you place down in the paper, which is not the case with, I don't know, let's say Photoshop, which you can just undo until you're happy with the stroke that you do. So yeah, that's the main reason why I decided to go back to traditional media. And also I wanted to start to portray the feelings that I was getting at the moment in regards of my art, and also related to just about everything in my life right now. For example, this piece is called Distant, because that's just how I've been feeling lately about my college. I'm not in a very prestigious school, or well, it was prestigious a while ago, but I just think that the fame stuck to it, and right now, even though it is quite crappy, people still think that it's a good college. But for all the time being that I've been there, I haven't learned really a lot of things, and so I don't want it to become a rant video. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background as to why the distant title, and so I wanted to just showcase that I've just lost interest in school and doing assignments and having good grades and all of that, and so yeah, that's why I chose this reference photo that had this guy standing in just a plain background. I believe it was just this guy, and he had a very stark cast shadow over his face, which was the hardest part to capture from the reference. Like, the likeness wasn't really that big of a deal to me because I didn't want him to look exactly like the reference. I just wanted to get the realism feeling of it. But the cast shadow was actually pretty hard to nail down because since the reference photo didn't have enough information for me to shade the face ended up looking very flat, and as you can see right now, it just looks like a big blob of paint on top of a face instead of looking like a cast shadow. So that was the first difficulty I ran into. I also usually start my paintings with shading the nose, the eyes, and the mouth. I start with pretty saturated colors, usually just a red with some colors mixed in to mute it down, but basically red. And then I put down a fair amount of paint in the paper and then just spread it out with some water until it shades the whole face. And then on the areas of the face that don't get a lot of blood flow, I usually use very cool colors, for example just blues and greens and all of that, and that's like kind of my aesthetic. But in this case I didn't do that. I started out with a base skin color, which was some sort of light red, almost orange, and then I started shading everything, like putting the cast shadow straight away on top of it, and I didn't really shade any of the face until the cast shadow was set, which I think was one of the mistakes I did with this piece, because it ended up looking like the face didn't have enough bone structure in it, which again was hard to do because the reference photo didn't really have much information for me to work from. But in the end I just managed to imagine where the shadows will be in a regular face, like with diffused lighting instead of just having a stark shadow across the face, and then went back in with to deepen the shadow. Right now what you see me doing is bringing some more color back to the piece, because sometimes when you work on a piece for a very long time it's hard to see like what's the stuff that you're missing. For example, in here I was missing saturation, and a tip that I have for you guys is to just snap a picture of your painting with your phone or with a camera or whatever, and then when you see through the viewfinder, you'll immediately spot the mistakes and the things that you can improve on, or that might have looked they were okay or finished already, but then you can see that they actually aren't. And so that's what I did. I took a picture of it and I realized that the skin tone and everything looked really washed out, and so I worked on that. Also, I realized that the background was too light. I realized this earlier in the painting, but I just decided to work on it when I was done with the face. And I also felt like darkening the background helped a lot with giving it a more of a sense of depth to it, because the shadow started looking more like it was a shadow instead of just a blob of paint. Then I also tried to define the jaw a little bit more. I don't know if you can see that, by lifting some of the color from the shadow, and then I felt like the shadow was too cool for the I initially wanted blue cool shadows, but then I realized that it looked kind of muddy, so I went back in with some red and tried to bring back some saturation and color to it so that it didn't look like dirt, I guess. And so yeah, that was basically the whole process of the face. Then I moved on to some more finer details. As you can see me working on the eyes, I realized that the watercolor had overcome the pen that I had put as an initial sketch, and so I just wanted to refine the eyes to make it look less ugly, because you know there's always that ugly stage in the painting in which it doesn't look like anything yet, but then if you further work on it, it starts getting better. And so that was that part of the painting. I went back in the lips as well with some colored pencils, because I felt like they had lost a lot of structure and that the shadows had become like very messy and all over the place. So I tried to fix that with navy blue and this red pencil. I don't know the exact shape, but it's just a red pencil. And in order for them to don't look very saturated, I layered them like one on top of the other, and then went back in with the white pencil to try and burnish it all. I started noticing that it looked a bit waxy, so I went in the end with the back of the pencil and tried to scrape that off. I also tried to redefine the shape of the eye because it was looking too small, and like it didn't have like eyelids. It was just like the eyeball engraved on his face. So I tried to fix that by shading a bit more the lower lid and also the upper lid of the face. Which reminds me that this reference was pretty tough to draw because the angles and proportions were really hard to get right. But yeah, in the end I managed to make it look acceptable, I believe. And so now I'm working on the eyelashes, which is my favorite part because I always do them in golden ink. It's actually from Winsor & Newton, and I love working with this ink because you can actually see when you lay down at first, you can see them, these little particles floating around in the binder or the liquid. I don't know what it is that they float but you can actually see them moving, which is pretty neat, and it's always so hard to capture it on camera. And I really like putting them on my Instagram stories because I feel like they look cool, but sometimes it's just pretty hard to get right. And yeah, now you see me working a little bit more on the background because I felt like if I had a more defined background, the shadow on his face will look more like a shadow. And that's the main thing I was concerned about during this whole piece, that it didn't look just like a darker part of the face, but that it looked like it was actually a shadow. So what I did was paint some white stripes across the painting to make it look more dynamic and to give it a little bit more direction and complement the way he's looking to the left, or well, to his right. And so I added that, and then I splattered a little bit more of white paint on the whole drawing, especially the corners. I accidentally splattered some also on his face, which was a bummer, but since the gouache was really watered down, it was pretty easy to get rid of it with just going back in with clear water and using the towel there to leave the color. And yeah, after a while I also realized that the initial spots of white that I had added at the beginning were a little bit were becoming too blurry for my taste, so I went back in and threw in a little bit more. I also darkened some areas of the background, and now I just add my signature, and I believe that's it for this painting. I really hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you learned something or just enjoy the video in general, and also it would mean a lot if you could just subscribe to my channel. I'm planning on uploading these videos every Sunday or so, but we'll have to see how much it takes me to edit them and everything and put them together basically. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.